and welcome to the second panel session of the day. If you're joining us now for the first session, a very good morning and thank you for joining us. My name is Sarveen Kandiah. I'm the Managing Director for OpenLearning Southeast Asia, and I'll be your moderator for the session. But some housekeeping before we start. Please do note that this session is being recorded. Feel free to chat and introduce yourselves in the chat box below and have a conversation there as well. If you're ever disconnected, please do join back via the Zoom link as part of your registration and it just start up automatically. And if you have any questions for the speakers at all, please put it in the Q&A box below. We will try to get to as many questions as possible, but in the event we do miss any of your questions or we are unable, we will get it answered after the event and we'll send you as part of the summary after the fact. We hope you had a good first session. So for this specific panel, we will be discussing designing industry-recognized micro-credentials in collaboration with industry partners. This whole week is about micro-credentials, and we kind of separated all the sections into various aspects of the development of a micro-credential as well as the delivery of it. So today, we have a host of panel speakers here. I want to introduce you Ms. Sook Ling, who is the Executive Director for Selangor Human Resource Development Center. She's over 16 years experience in training and assessment. She's a master trainer for courses such as Certificate 4 in Training and Education, Certificate in Vocational Education, but more importantly, she's a key driver in transforming SHRDC to greater heights with industry-driven programs. Next, we have also Dr. NorAzmi Alias, who's Senior VP of Research and Talent Management at CREST, but also the great advocate for the TheGreatLab Academy. CREST brings industry, academia, and government to work together in R&D, talent development, and market engagement to advance specifically more towards the E&E sector. But he's also the founder and advocate of the TheGreatLab, which is a nationwide movement that has trained over 8,000 people via industry academia collaboration. The TheGreatLab programs are streamlined into nurturing undergraduate talent to have relevant skills and experience to kind of cluster them prior to graduation. So industry relevance is right there. And finally, we have Adam Brimo, the founder and CEO of OpenLearning Limited. Without him, I think this is the whole reason we're here today. I started the company with the sole goal of increasing access to quality education. With close to 3 million learners and over 180 institutions, Adam has successfully grown OpenLearning to the #1 lifelong learning platform in Australia and Malaysia, and with a slowly growing presence in Indonesia as well. And OpenLearning has also recently launched CS 101, a highly regarded foundational computer science program acknowledged by the likes of Microsoft, Alibaba, Canva, and Chronosphere. So we've got a whole varied group of panelists here today. So the conversation will take place in sense of trying to understand what they did and their tips and tricks in terms of how they worked with industry to ensure that their content or their courses are relevant and trying to stay ahead of the game in terms of the various programs that are offered. And so if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to put it in the Q&A box below. And we'll try to take the questions as we go as well to kind of accommodate the various questions that will come through. So to kind of kick things off, I'm going to start with Ms. Sook Ling. With the various things that you're doing, ultimately though, SHRDC started because of the industry and academia alignment to kind of ensure that there was a whole connection there and try to come up with new programs. And there's an assumption that for specifically in the higher education providers, it's an assumption that you can just go straight to industry and try to figure out how they can do that. How do you approach new courses to ensure industry alignment? Is there anything that SHRDC does that you think would benefit for both higher education as well as maybe training providers looking to come into this space?
Good morning. Thank you, Sarveen, for the introduction and the question as well. My name is Sook Ling, as introduced. Back to Sarveen's question, just to how do we ensure that programs that we run is industry aligned? If you look at SHRDC setup, we were set up just to close the skills gap between what the industry needs versus what are available in the market. So there is always skills gap. All right, there's always skills gap simply because there is, even the mature market, the skills gaps are narrower. And if you look at emerging jobs or emerging technology or emerging markets, the skills gaps are wider. So our role is to close this skills gap. And in order for us to close the skills gap, what we do is we will need to then understand what are actually required by the industry. So we need to work very closely with our clients, whether they are from the mature industry or whether they are from the emerging industry, right? So we need to make sure that we understand their need, so that the programs that we're going to develop or offer are valid according to what the industry wants, meet the rigor, the level of what this position or this competencies required of a person, all right, is current to what their current needs, and it's also relevant to the industry as well. So it has to be valid, current, and relevant. So this can only happen if there's if we have a regular engagement with the industry. So that is what we normally do. And of course, when you talk about content development, the instructional design system, ADDIE, the ADDIE model still applies, whether we are developing a long-term program or short courses, or even micro-learning programs or micro-credential programs. We still follow the ADDIE model. Only thing that I would like to add, the first A, you're talking about assessing the needs of the industry. I would like to add another I in between ADDIE, call it ID maybe. The second I is to identify what competencies required before you start designing or developing the content. All right. So here is where we talk about identify the gap. So whether the competencies are readily available in the existing competency standard, be it with the MQF or the Australian qualification framework, where we follow very strictly on, or if there's none, then what do we do? Right, so let's say you're talking about Industry 4.0 content. There's a lot of these competency units which are not yet available in the MQF or even in the Australian qualification framework or training packages, right? So this emerging technology, emerging skills, then what do we do then? Because we will still need to close this gap. So what we do is we will need to write these competencies ourselves with the endorsement from the industry. Then only we will start to continue on with the process, so that we make sure that the programs that we develop meets the needs of the industry, is valid and is current. Yeah, so that is what we do in terms of ensuring that our program is aligned to what the industry needs and is aligned to closing the skills gap of the current needs. Yeah.
I like how you added that extra I there to kind of identify the gap. But it's also interesting because you kind of had, you don't stop if it's not there in terms of the competency framework. It's, you can actually kind of make it up and work with industry to kind of identify that. Just to kind of follow on question to that, what is the process to engage with industry? Is it, how do you go about working with industry in that sense? Is there like a process that you have, or is it more opportunistic depending on the type of programs that you're running?
We always focus on our core. If you look at SHRDC, our core programs are manufacturing related, IT, and also soft skills. So if an industry come to us and mention that, I'm in the manufacturing industry and I need people who are able to do this job that require maybe new software or new technology application where it's not available in the market, then from there, we know that we have the core, we can just work on the core and top it up with the additional requirement by the industry. But if it is a totally new industry and we foresee that there will be major needs, talent need in this industry, then we will then invest from the start do a proper feasibility study and then invest from the start. If you don't have the technology or the technical expertise within our organization, what we do is we also work very closely, or we search for partners, whether within Malaysia or outside Malaysia, to make sure that we bring this technology, bring this knowledge back to here to serve the needs of this particular industry. So there are two ways, whether it is a top up of what the current industry needs, or whether it's totally new and we see that it's feasible for us to invest and there is a long-term need for this type of competencies, then we will have make a decision on to invest in the lab, the capex and also the human capital within our organization to make sure that we are ready to serve this industry for a longer term, right?
Yeah, an investment like that, I gotta make sure the due diligence on whether people are actually asking for that course. It's definitely going to matter. I'll just kind of turn the question a little bit to Dr. NorAzmi. TheGreatLab has a finishing school platform, right? Could you share a little bit about that and how that started and what are you trying to achieve with that?
Okay, so thank you, Sarveen, for the invitation. So TheGreatLab, actually, the name is interesting, because we had a different name when we got started, and how it got started is not by us. Actually, it's not even by the industry. So we were having this, following. I think the early days of CREST, we were following Talent Corp and a few other industry partners in E&E sector to the UK, a graduate, kind of a program where there was this, kind of a company presenting their, companies and look for talent to hire, right? And we had some of those, that we met in UK came back and got to know some of the innovation program that was, carried out, in Penang area, also by the same group of companies. So they were looking in terms of, hey, how do we actually create a program that link between the Malaysian students outside of Malaysia, for example, and opportunity back in Malaysia, right? So I think the idea did not even come from the industry, did not even come from academia. It's come from the, I use the word, the beneficiary of this, which is one part, which is the talent pool. They were looking, hey, if I'm looking at opportunity to come back to Malaysia, I didn't know what is the opportunity. So we take that and, and we went to the industry, partners. At the time, we already have probably close to, 10 or more of industry players, within CREST. We say, hey, we have this great opportunity. There is a demand from the talent itself to know, how they link up to you guys. And, these are, cream de la cream from Malaysian, schools before they went to the UK universities and some of the other European universities. Then they said, let's create a program where essentially you can tell them what the company are, what the company does, and then in terms of what are the job opportunities. And in order to select them or to get them excited about, to be, coming back, we give them, a placement for internship, so we can probably fly them back for the intern if they not thinking of coming back. By having, a kind of an industry challenge, right? Specific problem by the company, given to the students that are still in the sometimes year 2 or even not even year 3. I think they have a 3-year program in the UK. Even the year 1 students, they come back for, just summer, so-called vacation. And if they can secure the project, interested, by the company, then everything paid for, right? Companies willing to pay for the travel, for the given even project funding, right? And that was how that started. So, but unfortunately, the adoption rate is not high because they got taken back by the challenges given by the industry. It was a real problem that industry looking for this, the cream de la cream of Malaysian that are in the UK or not to solve the problem. So to cut the story short, we actually get only 10 submission out of the 200, 300 that show interest initially. And then we select 3 projects that was actually eventually get into the internship program, right? And that's how it got started. Then we thought about, okay, maybe there was some reason why these Malaysian students that are trained by our so-called primary school, secondary school program, having this kind of mindset that this is too tough for me, too difficult. Because and then when we talk to some of this, so we call them the student co-founders of TheGreatLab. So I think they were taken away because the problem are real, and they're afraid of failing. They're afraid of getting rejected by the companies, in fact. So there are problem challenges them from Intel, from Motorola, from Australia, from TT Vision, from UST Global, and you name it. These are the leaders of the industry. And when these top students are sending the proposal, they say, what if the Intel reject my proposal? What will happen? I said, Intel reject, so Intel will reject you. So that means your proposal is not good enough in their eye, right? So so we take that further. Say, why don't we now do a bit more in terms of take it smaller, do like a summer boot camp, similar kind of format, challenge them from industry, but we put element of some learning from the industry in terms of what are they looking for, what are the technology, what are the product as part of the boot camp. Very short, 3 days boot camp that we had initially. And then we start to see that people start to realize, okay, we need to understand in terms of what the technology that I need to acquire, in my skills to actually solve the problem the industry wants, right? So from there we start to develop this, and it's called the TheGreatLab. The name not given by us, it's given by the 13 student co-founder. And the reason why I use the word I'm the advocate, because I'm advocating on behalf of this, the different stakeholders, the students, the industry, the academia. Advocating this method of the TheGreatLab, and it came from my previous work in Motorola, where I kind of promote the idea that the labs out there, it's not inside the Motorola facility, it's actually the labs out there, with the departments that we have, and it's basically we're bringing the needs from the industry to the program, where we do more like augmentation program, not part of the curriculum first. They learn about what industry are looking for, what are the needs of the industry in terms of skills required, so that they can solve the current problem and future problem, right? So, I think that's how we get started. And along the line, we added some industry lecture series, which are essentially could be advanced level courses that are not offered at undergraduate level, for example. And these are what required by industry. So industry require them to be able to do certain programming in specific details in terms of taking the problem that they have to solve, taking the programming, the coding in C++ or the Python, and build a solution, right? And it's not straightforward because you have to learn multiple skills, and that's the part of this the TheGreatLab program does, because we put this you use the word micro-credential, courses to actually to provide the learning, the basic learning for them to acquire that first, and the detail then we can offer in a form of maybe 1 or 2 credit hours, right? Courses for them to actually acquire more in-depth learning after they have gone through the so-called initial stage of taking initial learning, maybe a short period of 2 to 4 hours of workshop, and then use that knowledge to actually build a solution, or build the ideas that they have to solve a particular problem. So that's how we got started. Yeah.
That's an amazing journey, by the way. Like how it all started is definitely a story by itself, I think. Perspective. But I think you hit on multiple points, and I just want to maybe drag one point first, which is you gave the students an opportunity to actually work on something relevant. Giving almost their hands dirty and actually actively engaging in said topic, right?
And they will fail, and we want them to fail, and not able to deliver. So that's where the learning most of the learning comes from, failing, early, failing fast. That's what we practice. So I think one of the tagline is dare to take the challenge, and also dare to fail. That's what we tell them. If you're not there, willing to fail in our program, don't come. It's as simple as that, right? If you think you're at the top of your class and you're going to be doing well, don't even think about it. So you may not even, be in the top 3, position at the end of the bootcamp. If you think I know everything already before you come to the bootcamp. So yeah, sorry, I was kind of cut you off a little bit.
I mean, Asian culture, right? You say you're not going to be the top, and you still want me to apply. That scares a lot of people there. But how does industry take that? So, for example, if you're designing this course, right? And you're designing this bootcamp / augmenting with more lecture series, but ultimately you're working on a project, right? And how does industry recognize that? So if I'm I'm just coming from the audience perspective. I'm a university. I'm a training company. what is it that that industry said to you, or you worked with industry to ensure that the GreatLab Academy had, so that the industry will actually recognize your program instead, and kind of take your students on?
So for us, it's looked very straightforward, very simple, because everything that we do is based on the requirement of the industry. So when we crafted the projects and also the syllabus for our boot camps and also for our courses, it all comes based on the need from the industry. So actually, we don't create it just out of nowhere to say we need this more talent, we need this. And I think over the last few years, the topic of AI machine learning become a very hot topic. But we said AI machine learning for what problem, right? AI machine learning for in solving the manufacturing problems in the industry. AI machine learning to solve the healthcare issues. So we take the real industry problem and put into the perspective that it has to be solved, and this can be solved using the new technology, AI machine learning, for example. It can be solved by robotics. So we craft the program based on the needs of the industry and to tailor to specific jobs that they could offer post this learning and post a completion of the study, for example. So in fact, the industry actually the one that's suggesting what are the content. So actually we have a series of discussions say what do we need to do for this particular job category or industry needs. For example, I think the last few years we were banging so much on the industry 4.0. So they need not so much in terms of going to the AI machine learning, but even to do the basic how to gather the data and make sense of the data, the data science. And when we did that program with Intel and also with IBM, we realized that all the students have taken statistics 101, but when you test them, are they able to apply what they learned? Zero, right? And sorry to say that, but by giving them a problem to solve, and when we open these courses, we say, you don't have to be an engineering student; it could be anything from business school or whatever, from non-technical. And show me how you take the data they are given. Either you find your own data or we give you a set of data. Show me how you analyze the data. And that's actually a big learning from the students to know in terms of how do you gather the data, how you arrange the data, and how do you organize and visualize in presentation. And the simple basic applying the statistics and also the use as simple as an Excel spreadsheet to actually do that. And I think this is how we do well, because we create program based on the needs of the industry. So as we go along, I think over the years, we go in terms of from embedded system, even IC design, AI machine learning for manufacturing for different verticals, semiconductor, and now it's coming back again. Everybody wants to get into this digital kind of a solution, right? Embedded software and cloud computing becoming a hot topic now. So we are creating our own a program with the two big names, Intel and Motorola. Actually, we just launched it about a month ago. And that's how we do things. So basically we are the so-called enabler for the industry to create a program to augment the learning, because in fact some of the content that is put to the engineering software talent program that we have is basically available in the same universities, but they're offered at the advanced postgraduate degree level. But it's needed by the industry for the fresh graduate that's coming in.
Yeah, and I think
there's a tricky bit.
Yeah, so I guess there's multiple ways to look at it, right? You're going directly to industry, but then now you've started bridging that gap a lot more. You're getting a lot more experience in that component, and then you kind of touched on the idea that regardless of what courses you've taken, there's a foundational aspect of whether you actually understand the topic, for you to be able to scale up that learning. Which kind of dovetails nicely to Adam. With the recent launch of CS101, the foundational computer science course, you managed to get 4 different tech leaders from Alibaba, Microsoft, Canva, and Chronosphere to kind of support the program. Was there a specific approach, or were there different aspects to how you kind of set up the course, and how did you work with the industry to kind of get them to recognize this?
Yeah, thanks, Sarveen. It's great to be here and great to see everyone virtually. And I agree with the previous comments there as well around looking at what the gaps are in the industry and what challenges everyone are facing. So I mean, at OpenLearning, our primary role is to enable every education provider to build and deliver transformative courses, and to help them identify these kind of gaps in the market. So pretty much what we try and do is then sort of look ahead and see what challenges education providers, universities, training companies will face in the coming years, and where there are gaps in the content and programs and partnerships that are available. And pretty much that's how we came up with CS 101. We sort of recognized the need in the market from our own internal perspective. OpenLearning is a technology company, seeing what challenges we see in the people that we interview and that we hire, and where the gaps are in the sector. Then validated that gap, and then looked at what's the best way to approach this this opportunity. And while we are enabling everyone to build a whole range of different types of courses, we decided that for this particular program for computer science, the way that we wanted to approach it was to try and put together the foundational course, in some ways equivalent to the first course of a Bachelor of Computer Science degree in terms of outcomes, but in a way that brings in more engagement from industry, and then eventually brings on board universities and education providers and industry associations as well. So CS 101 is really meant to bring all different types of parties together, from the subject matter experts who are computer scientists and software engineers across about 10 different companies, to tech companies such as Canva, Microsoft, Alibaba, Chronosphere, and others, and eventually the universities and education providers. Now, the way that we did that was actually by seeing or having an assumption, I should say, to start with, which is that there is a gap in the space. I think a lot of times we just assume that because we can't find something that it doesn't exist. But then sometimes as you look a bit further, you realize that actually there's a lot of people who are doing either something similar or complementary, and there are ways to work together. So we started with an assumption of what the gap was in the market. And to us, that the gap seemed to be a shortage of people with sort of foundational computer science skills, the type of skills you get by studying a computer science degree at a top university in the world. And the reason why this gap exists is that there's actually no set requirement for any particular qualification to enter the technology sector. So you have people who are working as programmers, software developers, software engineers, maybe calling themselves software engineers, but actually don't have an engineering degree. Maybe they went through a bootcamp program, or maybe they were self-taught. And that's fantastic that people are able to enter the sector with a variety of backgrounds, but it means there's gaps in their knowledge and experience. And those are gaps that the industry really wants to fill, because they're happy to hire people from different backgrounds, but once they hire them, they also then realize, okay, what are their strengths and weaknesses? So with CS 101, that was the assumption that there were these gaps that existed. And we set about designing the program and the curriculum to provide a comprehensive foundation that someone, pretty much the core of the beginning of a computer science degree. Now, to get some of these companies on board, what's required is, first to, I guess, have this assumption, and then to validate it. We can validate it with data in terms of, the number of jobs that require computer science skills in Australia, for example, that are unfilled or that will be created in the next 5 years. But that's very high level. So what we did is we actually reached out to people within our network at a number of these different technology companies, and we identified the senior people in charge of the function that would benefit most if we solve this problem. So, for example, in computer science, it's the heads of engineering, the CTOs, CIOs. These are the type of people who feel these challenges every day. At the same time, on the recruitment side, the people in charge of talent and people and culture in these companies, they also are trying to fill a large number of roles and interviewing people on a regular basis. So by reaching out to those two, we were able to find the people who have this need. And then we were able to actually demonstrate, by walking through the course on open learning as we were building it, what we're actually doing to address those gaps. And that came down to them actually seeing that we were designing a whole range of unique content and activities that would be filling some of those particular gaps, to the extent that some people at the companies even commented that there were, things that they weren't aware of that were actually in the course, which was quite exciting to them. And that meant that they could see how this type of course could actually over time not just improve or provide professional development opportunities to their own staff, but it could also enable people in adjacent roles to move into the technology sector. So by, I guess, being very open and transparent about what we were trying to achieve and walking through some of the things that we were starting to design the course, but then also inviting them in as well, in the sense that, we, with the industry partners that we have on board, they actually can provide input into the course curriculum itself. And as we eventually look at developing other courses, we also look to them to provide guidance on what the other gaps are in the roles that they're seeing. So we effectively created, I guess, this industry partner category, and that's what the companies were invited to participate in. We also actually have industry experts in the program, and those are individuals who have experience in the field. And I think this is probably an interesting, I guess, element, which is something we probably don't often see as much, which is actually highlighting individuals who have experience or profile in the sector, really like subject matter experts, and having them involved alongside the industry partners. So I think that actually provides some confidence to each party that what is actually being achieved in the course actually meets both goals. So that's pretty much how we approached it from the beginning. And then obviously it can take time to get different partners on board, but that's one way of doing it. And I think what we're hoping is that what we learn from this experience, we can then continue sharing with all of our partners at OpenLearning, and then start making more connections between some of the companies that we have involved in this program and other courses that are actually being delivered through OpenLearning across all of our all the partners that use the platform. So we're hoping that it's both a learning experience, but also CS 101 as a course is something that could eventually be shared more broadly and be recognized by more institutions, or even be licensed from a content perspective to a lot of our partners as well.
I'm just gathering my thoughts here. There's a whole lot to unpack. I think really interesting that for the benefit of everyone is there were not just one stakeholder when you go and approach an industry. There's actually multiples within departments, one of which is the relevant head of department that you want to engage, but also from the recruitment side, which I thought was really interesting, because that also kind of plugs the gap, right? Because they're the ones actually going out to look for these candidates to be able to kind of do that. And the other point that you brought up, it's about not just the company, but the individuals getting involved in the program. So if you're looking to build your own programs, subject matter experts necessarily come from companies, but also the individual. And I think that's a really key difference when looking to design your own programs as well. And just to kind of add to that, what does a student, when the companies are engaging with you, what are they asking for from you when let's say I'm going to partner you? What are they looking to say? Hey, okay, I'm going to partner you, or I'm going to acknowledge you, but what's the reciprocal idea then?
Yeah, so I guess it's a good question. What does the industry partner get out of it? And that's always, I guess that always depends on the type of course that's being offered. In some situations, you might be co-developing a course. In other situations, they might be more involved from a marketing or recruitment perspective. So for CS 101, it's actually very simple. We actually have an agreement effectively that we can put in place, and that specifies what each party will do, what they will bring to it. And I guess the important thing for us with the industry partners is that we're able to have a large number of partners over time. So that means that the partners know that there's going to be other companies involved as well. So they're not going to be the ones that actually define everything about the course. So what the partners get in this instance is they get the opportunity to participate from a branding and marketing perspective, which is very important from an employer branding perspective, where a lot of these tech companies are competing for talent, and they're trying to ensure that they're seen as cutting edge and that they're involved in education initiatives. On top of that, they can provide input into the program itself. So we walk through things, we demonstrate different activities and parts of the curriculum, and they can provide input or ideas into that. They can also provide feedback, once people have gone through the program. And we actually provided them some free spots in the course as well each year. And that means that their staff are actually taking the course, and they have both firsthand experience, and also we get some feedback as well. So I'd say the industry partner program is quite sort of, I guess, a friendly program. It benefits both sides. But there's lots of ways that you can partner. You know, you can co-develop courses and all that kind of thing. But this, I guess, is a bit of a sort of lighter touch. And really the key idea is to ensure that the course is validated and that the industry is supporting it. And down the road, we can look at things like, you know, even industry providing internships and, you know, other opportunities for people who take the course if that's what they're looking for.
Well, thank you, Adam. I guess the main idea from that is it's not just one way when you're going to industry. Please do remember that it works both ways in terms of trying to work together ultimately for that win-win situation that you can go for. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, if you have any questions for the panelists, please put it in the Q&A box below. As we go as well, there'll be poll questions that come up. Please do take the time to answer them. And we'll keep going as we go, and I'll kind of take in the questions along the way in that sense. So Ling, you know, how different is it for SHRDC learning from the various, because you have different industry programs, right? And then you cater to multiple various types of industry. And to make an investment into one program, because you're going to go into it and design it, how do you look at it from a course alignment perspective? And when you make that investment, you know, I was made to understand that even SHRDC explores partnerships, not just locally, right? Because that same demand could be kind of cut across regionally and also globally. How do you go about doing that?
On our regional business, especially during the pandemic, we see that that there is a need for us to transform and to make training available, not only I'm talking about practical session, not only face-to-face, but we need to make this training available on a virtual platform as well. So we have clients from Vietnam and Indonesia attending our technical programs, where before the pandemic hits, we were thinking about, you know, how do we send our training kits to Jakarta or to Ho Chi Minh City for a 5 days hands-on training, which is impossible because we know for sure that, you know, our training kits will get stuck at the custom, right? So but then during this pandemic, internally we see that, you know, business have to go on, classes have to continue. So how do we continue our classes despite not having students back to the center? Right, so our internal team then they sit down together and brainstorm and came up with the idea of setting up a remote access lab, you know, where training kits are available at our center, where students are able to access to these training kits from home. Right, so they are able to do practical activities, practical assessments from home rather than having to come to SHRDC. So if you look at training is the first industry that is first to close and the last to open. Right. So in this year itself, we were closed from May and just opened like last week. So what happened? How to sustain the business if let's say we are still sitting and waiting and not able to offer this remote training? All right. So what we do is we invested in setting up this remote lab and put our programs on the OpenLearning platform where students can access the theory, where they are also virtually facilitated by our trainers. And when come to practical session, they are able to access to our remote lab. So we give them a full training experience, full learning experience as in face-to-face as well. So right now, we can also offer our programs to Vietnam and to Indonesia, similar programs, similar content, and they can access to our lab 24/7, 365 days a year, right? So with that, we also foresee that because different country or different companies or different participants, they have different levels of competency as well. So therefore, our programs are also developed in smaller modules, ranging from 1 to 5 days, right? So we don't do a long program of We used to start a program in 26 days for our corporate clients. But now if you look at our content, it's now chopped into smaller modules, and we are now able to offer micro-credential programs based on these smaller modules. Meaning, as a participants, they are able to then pick which level or which programs that they need, and they can then top up and do the scaffolding from there. So they don't have to always start from the bottom. They can start from the middle based on their competency level. So that is what we are doing right now to sustain the business. Micro-credential is the way to go. Therefore, we really work very closely with OpenLearning, and then I think your platform is superb and it supports our needs. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for that. I think you touched on two very big points. The first one is, especially if you're in an industry where machinery is required or some kind of hands-on is required, it's not necessarily a complete dismissal that you can't do it anymore, given the situation. It's about how you redesign the package and redesign the offering, and what you did by creating a virtual lab. So technically, you can still access all the machinery. I guess it can't work for everything, but for the ones that can, it's like, why not, right? So I think that's a big inspiration in terms of like just thinking, how do you reimagine that component? Because you can also take up the big chunk of the discussions, the theory, the ideas online, and the offline component can be broken up. How was the acceptance from companies for that? So when you kind of moved it to that hybrid model, or sort of hybrid, how did companies react? And like, was it successful? Do they want more of it, given that they're now staff not taken away for so long?
Okay, when we started our virtual training platform and also a virtual facilitation session, if you talk about last year, when pandemic started, the take-up rate is very low. Even the participants feel that, no, I can't study online. I can't pay attention on a virtual lesson, right? So there are two things that we need to do. One is we need to be able to engage the participants virtually, right? It's not a one-way thing. I have people coming to us and saying that, oh, I've attended this training and it's called the mono, we call it one-way training, where the trainers are speaking for 8 hours, only one-way communication. So that can work. So as early April last year, we started a virtual facilitation class. I personally attended the class. I personally deliver these programs and then teach our internal trainers to be able to, how do we engage participants online? You know, when we are at home, there are many things around us. There are kids running around. Our span of attention is very small.
Yeah.
Small little thing, we will just sway the attention away. So we need to have the participants to do activities online as well. So we use a lot of online collaboration platform like Microboard, Mural, you name it. We try all sorts, and as long as the trainer himself or herself are comfortable, we will use that collaborative whiteboard so that participants are able to collaborate and to engage with each other and also with the facilitator. So that's what we do. So from there, if you look at last year versus this year the pandemic MCO 3.0 hit again in May. We foresee that a lot of companies now, they came back to us and say, okay, now we are ready for classes, right? Like our remote lab, we don't just sell remote lab, just tell them I have remote lab, come attend training, you will use my remote lab. But what we do is we have open trial session for the participants to have a try on how it feels like when you have to do practical session via dial into the platform. You try, if you feel comfortable, then you sign up. If you think that you still need time, then you wait. So what happened is because of all these open sessions or trial sessions open to the participants, we get a lot of positive feedback. And now, right now, even we are now open, we still have participants saying that we opt for virtual because we learn the learning experience is the same. So right now, even today, we can open about 70% of our classes are still on virtual platform. And our lab, our virtual lab is still running actively as of today. Yeah.
Okay. So it took 3 waves of COVID, and now everyone is finally kind of moved over to say, okay, it's actually doable. Let's find some kind of solution online. And I think another thing that you touched on there was if you're looking to build micro-credentials, if you design it online, your opportunity increases because now you can go regional and or international very quickly to kind of generate more revenue as well, or enrollments from that perspective. And it's not just about 8-hour lecture, just converting face-to-face online. It's about redesigning your program to be more engaging and catering to the attention span that's coming down kind of lower. And if I just to jump to Dr. NorAzmi for a bit, there's a lot of opportunity here if you kind of go towards the micro-credential space and working with industry. How does an education provider start in terms of collaborating with specifically, say, the E&E industry for you? Is there an opportunity? Is industry looking for it? And if I'm a lecturer, if I'm a trainer, and I want to do something with you, where do I start? And like, where are the opportunities for this?
So that's a great question. I think it's the right time also to discuss it here, because when we first started, our kind of a BHAG goals is how do we influence the so-called curriculum, right? And I think maybe SHRDC have gone through the same journey, and we've gone through our 8 years, of experience trying to so-called influencing, changing the curriculum. That's like trying to move a mountain, right? I mean, there's so many layers of so-called approvals and justification need to be done, and they keep changing the so-called the guts at the head of department, program coordinator and whatnot, and the guys at it. So you will never get any kind of a continuity, if you want to say that. We got lucky with one of the new states that we work very well, very closely, UiTM Shah, for example. So how to get this education entity, and also later we talk about the so-called professional practitioners and expert the industry to be part of what we're doing, right? First and foremost thing, if you take the approach of the academia, how they get the requirement, they have this forum they call industry academia panel, right? Where they select a couple of companies to be on the academic panel to review the curriculum and giving the challenges. And it typically only end up you have discussion there for about 2-3 hours per year or for 2 years, and then very little traction, right? Or they will always question be how the requirement provided only pertaining to the particular company in the panel. They're not representing other companies in the industry, right? And so when those requirements are reviewed by the coordinator, by the Senate, they say it's only coming from 1 or 2 companies. This is not industry-wide, so we cannot change our curriculum to the need of 1 or 2 companies, because they will not be the one hiring everybody that are graduating. So that's so-called some of the real challenges, right? So what we have been doing as a CREST, how we facilitate this industry and academia kind of a collaboration in building more industry relevant talent is we do a bit more of a cross-cutting the industry, right? So when in terms of in the early days, there was a big requirement for embedded system engineer, right? For example, right? And now they call IoT, by the way, and then that was 8 years ago. So we were looking at it coming from the people actually doing at the chip level, people doing at the board level, people doing at the system level, and what are the different requirements of embedded system required by these different companies. And then you start to create in terms of what are the different skills required. Some they are common, some they are not. Even the programming language needed by the different companies are different. Some need the C#, C++, some some need to get down to what much more fundamentals kind of theory and learning about machine so-called programming, right? Machine level programming, and that's basically for academia to do that. It's going to be taking them a long time. First, who to talk to, how do I bridge this gap, and because we came from the industry, we have industries. I was in Motorola. We were doing the university relation kind of program before I joined CREST. So we provide the requirement from a company, when I was in Motorola, to 5 different universities, right? And do the mapping. So it has to be based on the training needs analysis. What are the training needs, or what are the skills needed by the industry, right? And in industry they call it TNA, but I think here we call it in terms of what are the skills gap required, right? To be closed, and so that we can close the gap, and then try to do a mapping with the academia. And that's not a one-day process, not a one-time session. It's a multiple session. And what you do, we bring together the industry and academia, coming together, say, guys, this is what industry is are saying, and we have become more like the facilitator, the coordinator of the session. Said, let's listen from this industry. These are the requirements, and the academia will take, okay, now I know your requirement. Now they will go back and take a look at their so-called curriculum, what they are offering, right? And more than not is they need to bring multiple so-called either faculties or department. For example, when we did embedded system, you need to be good in electrical engineering, but also you need to be good in programming. Some of these programming courses are not offered in the engineering schools. It's offered in the computer science schools, and that's the bridging required within the academia. And sometimes that doesn't happen overnight, right? It doesn't happen over a year, because there's a lot of so-called convincing of the Senate, the program committee, that they have to so-called adopt the courses from a different department. And I think there's also a silo mentality between, sorry to say that, I'm going to be very blunt, among the departments in the academia, even, right? And that's basically the barrier you have to break, right? And if they could have done that, we wouldn't be here today talking about this, right? Yeah. So what we could offer as a CREST, we will able to collate, use the word collate the so-called requirement of the industry, and this has to be done at least once in 2 years, right? So because with the rapid changing of the industry, electronic industry and digitalization apply in many different areas, and it's rapidly changing. So every 2 years, you need to understand what are the next 2-3 years new skills required, right? So there's a talk about future skills in not about 5 years. It's talking about immediately 2 years. So you have to do this, very quickly, and you have a set of people out there. I'm pretty sure SHRDC has their own team doing the learning need, training analysis, learning and development. What are your members in the industry needed, right? And it has to be done through industry so-called association that bring a pool of multiple stakeholders in the same industry, or multiple industry but same kind of a skills requirement, for example, right? And I think I salute Adam for the CS 101 that you guys are doing, and that's great, because you have people that are providing of the technology, people are using the technology, but they need to bring people that have everybody to have the basic knowledge of computer science, right? And in the old days, we call it programming, right? Programming 101. It's not just a name called computer science. Everybody has to learn programming. Though I'm an engineer, I had to learn a basic four-strand programming. These are all all coding language, right? So but everybody has to learn the structure of programming, right? So that's what we can do, and I think this is the approach that you need to take. It's not just with CREST. You can also work with any other industry, association, right? So depending on what industry you are, go to talk to those guys. Can we understand the requirement of your industry? I think that's how it should be done. Yeah.
Well, I could argue whether 2 years is too long as well, depending on which. But to your point, the training need analysis, I think, is something that could spearhead, specifically within the higher education sector, given the limitations in terms of process. Using micro-credentials as the way opportunity, you could kind of offer standalone programs like what Prof. Saleh was saying just now. And that is an opportunity for the faculty to kind of branch out and work with the relevant industry players such as yourselves, CREST, SHRDC, to kind of figure out where the collaborations are, because it's not just about working independently. You can always collaborate with the people who have the analysis done and the relevancy in that perspective, I think. Adam, in the experience that you're having with the various micro-credential partners, both in Australia and Malaysia, from a learning design perspective though, if I'm an educator trying to create a course or a micro-credential, are there findings or are there anything that educators should be looked to be designing to enhance the student value taking a micro-credential course?
Yeah, I would say it definitely is, and I think it goes to you know, what Sook, Ling and NorAzmi have been saying as well around the experience that you have when you actually get into a course. I think, you know, when training courses and university courses were run face-to-face all the time, you know, when you're running something face-to-face, you benefit from a lot of spontaneous interaction that occurs in the room. So, you know, in many ways, you think more about, in some cases, the content you're trying to deliver, or, you know, some of the activities you might run in the room. But, you know, the collaboration in some ways happens automatically because you're physically in the same space. When you're doing things online, it's a very different environment. You actually have to plan those interactions up front and design the activities and projects so that they drive the community in the course and encourage people to sort of network and collaborate and work together to solve problems. So in many ways, I think a lot more work goes in up front in the learning design phase for an online course for it to be done well versus when you're running a program either remotely, let's say just via Zoom or via face-to-face. It's probably more of the effort is probably in the facilitation. You know, you still do some planning, but the facilitation, the running of the course is the key part. So in terms of learning design, that's where you know, we try and encourage more collaborative and constructive activities. So rather than, you know, a passive learning experience where you're watching videos and maybe, you know, you have some small corrective exercises like quizzes, that's not really enough, you know, to actually run, I think that's, or teach some substantial skills in a micro-credential. You really need to have a lot of activities and projects, and you really need to create that community in your course. And the facilitators then become more like community managers, providing feedback and guiding people and, you know, supporting them as they go through the learning journey online. Now, actually having those activities and those projects that are very open-ended actually has a lot of other benefits as well, because you know, we've seen that it can make the course a lot more scalable. So if you design all those kinds of activities, you can actually have a much larger number of people in the course working independently, and then have you know, fewer facilitators to the number of learners in the course, and actually still get a great outcome, even better outcome. The other thing is that a lot of people, when they're starting to look at micro-credentials now, they're often asking, you know, what are they going to get out of it? And but what are they going to get out of, you know, what's in it for me kind of thing if I take your course? And I think there's two parts to that. One is the credential, so to speak, and that credential could be, there's a lot of different things it could be. It could be, you know, a digital badge, it could be a certificate, it could be aligned to a micro-credentialing framework or approach. So, you know, for example, as you probably heard, we've created the sort of OpenCreds framework, which is one way that we're trying to, you know, provide, I guess, a quality assurance standard, and in some respects, like a micro-credential brand in some ways that employers and institutions will start to recognize. And then they'll know that, okay, this is an OpenCred, it's gone through a quality assurance process, it meets a certain structure, the learning hours and time have been verified and all of that. But there's lots of other approaches as well. And the OpenCreds approach is aligned to, in Australia with the Australian qualifications framework, in Malaysia aligned to the good practices guideline from the MQA for micro-credentials and the MQF. But, you know, and there's a lot of different approaches out there to make that work, and all of those can add a lot of value. The second part we think is around the portfolio. And the portfolio is really how someone demonstrates what they learned in the course. Because a lot of courses, there's a lot of online courses now, as we've all seen. I mean, we're all creating and supporting online courses. But people can go online and find a free course or find a course for $10 or something. And they might put that next to your course, which might be more expensive and have more brands behind it. and have your reputation and credibility, and people might ask what the difference is. And in some ways, you can differentiate in through the marketing and through the content and through the delivery, but also having a portfolio that everyone who takes the course walks away with, that allows them to demonstrate to their employer or to a potential employer or to an institution if they're looking at recognition of prior learning, what they actually learned in that course and what learning outcomes were covered. And I think that portfolio itself is also very valuable. But in order to have a great portfolio, I think you need to have some good learning design in your course to make sure that there's enough open-ended activities so people have the opportunity to demonstrate their capabilities through the course itself. So yeah, I think it's a very important area, and in many ways, I think great learning design can help combat some of the Zoom fatigue that I think some people may have been having over the past 18 months if they're just sitting there watching the 8 hours, as Sook was saying.
Yeah. What's in it for me? I think that's the tagline there. If I'm, if you're a higher education provider or a training company creating these kind of micro-credentials, it's not straightforward. You're competing with so many different types of programs, so many different variations of it. And what Adam was mentioning, if I'm a student taking your course, how am I going to benefit from that? And I think that's the core focus when looking to design your micro-credentials and your course, and what aspects are needed from a learning design perspective, platform perspective, ecosystem perspective, to be able to kind of work that environment. I'm very wary of the time in that sense. So I think just one final question for everyone. I'll start with Ms. Ling. If I'm a higher education provider or I'm a training company and I want to collaborate with you, given that you have specific sector skills and analysis done, what type of institutions do you want to work with or can come and work with you to kind of collaborate to build better quality programs in your space?
Okay, we in SHRDC, we like to build the whole ecosystem to serve the industry. We don't have all of what the industry needs in SHRDC. Okay, in terms of the subject matter experts, in terms of even the technology experts. So we welcome all subject matter experts and also technology experts to come forward to talk to us, because we are very close with the industry. We know what the industry needs. If among us we can't find a subject matter expert within Malaysia, we will then have to look out. Ideally, we want to work with whatever available here first. If really there's none, then only we will look out. The other one that I wanted to mention, like also to echo Dr. NorAzmi's comment just now on closing the skills gap and helping the higher institution to embed some of these latest or current programs into their curriculum. Because that is like moving a big mountain. Like that process is like moving a big mountain, like Dr. Nazli mentioned. So instead of that, maybe it's a possibility for the university or the institution to then recognize a third-party endorsement, such as a portfolio, like Adam mentioned. If the students are able to produce portfolio, or students are able to produce digital badges offered or awarded by OpenCred. I think OpenCred has a superb system to make sure that the quality is there. So if university or institutions are able to recognize that third-party endorsement and convert it into a credit for the students, I think this micro-credit credential will be massive. It will be massive. I think this is the way to go, because skills gaps are always there, and the university can't close as fast as we do, because we are very close with the industry, and we are able to develop the content as also faster, because we do not have to follow the regulation by the MQF. So if it is possible for a third-party recognition, and then I think the whole ecosystem is going to be complete, and the industry or the talents are able to get right skills for them to be able to employ, rather than just have to go through again, another skills gap training of 3 months, 2 months. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a huge point. I think that's opportunity. When you're reimagining your micro-credential strategy, that's a huge opportunity. Collaboration, recognition of different types of artifacts and programs. Dr. NorAzmi, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
I think on my side, because we are continue to looking enabling future, solution of future technology for the industry partners that we're working with through our, another program which is more of collaborative R&D, right? And I think that there is a sweet spot that we discussed about this early in terms of those who actually have certain specific facility or technology area that could benefit the larger ecosystem, right? And this is who we want to partner with, because for example, right now with the demand for new technology in so-called computer embedded software, and also embedded Android, and try to do a more digitized solution of your hardware, for example, right? So we have to work with the people who actually has a certain technology platform. For example, we work with Intel over the years, one of the early co-founders of CREST, for example. So they have this, create a new open platform, software and also hardware for for us to work with, to provide the learning to the graduating students, or even those who actually have graduated want to adopt new skills, right? The other part, I think, in terms of the laboratory, because some of this work to acquire the skills, not just in the digital side, in terms of the processing knowledge and ability to actually to develop a particular engineering design, for example. Leveraging the laboratory that are that's available in one academic, for example. We have few example, situation, real cases, I think over the last 2-3 months, where one, we involve ourselves also as part of the program with the UTM, for example, where they have the Center of AI and Robotics, right? So where it can be used also to part of train the interns, train the so-called those actually have graduated with the involvement from the academic, the industry, with certain open source courses, with the so-called the physical laboratory that UTM Cairo has. And I saw this one example just recently in the LinkedIn that I picked up, where the labs are in Muslim Malaya, and they're looking in terms of this very important work as we see now the country moving into EV and also the sustainable energy. They're looking in terms of how to develop a new solution for managing the power system, for example. And we get interns coming from other universities, from UiTM Shah Alam, and do the internship in the universities in Muslim Malaya, for example. And what will make it even better if the requirement for the projects can be coming from the from the industry, and the industry already involved in terms of defining what is the final output of the project. And if the student does it well, and this is immediately, hey, this will be a good student for industry to hire, right? And I think the micro credentials, with the elements of industry, it's not just about providing the learning, but also opportunity to be spotted by company. I like that talent, it has learn the skills that we need them to learn, and also demonstrating how you apply those skills in solving the industry problem. I think essentially, in my definition of micro-credential, has to have the element of the benefiting from by the industry, by the academia, and by the talent themselves, right? So I think that will be my comment, Sarveen.
No, thanks for that. I think another point to that is it's not just institution to industry; it's also the whole ecosystem. There's a way to partner each other in terms of trying to create this environment. Adam, do you want any final things to say, to add to this?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's wonderful to be here with you, and I think just echoing some of those comments, I think what we see is probably a great opportunity for both collaboration and also differentiation. So collaborating between organizations, between education providers to solve industry needs, I think is an area where there's great opportunity, because every education provider can't solve every problem for industry. And we need to find ways that we can work more closely together to do that. And we've seen some great examples of that here, I think, with CREST and HRDC. Also, we've seen it with universities in Australia, where they've collaborated to build programs with industry and with different organizations. But also on the differentiation side, I think being able to focus on specific programs where the provider or the institution has, great expertise and very strong networks, I think is actually a very important area, because I think there's a challenge that we try and go too broad. And every education provider looks at building every single course to meet every single opportunity. But if we focus on some specific opportunities and try and get scale in those programs from an enrollments perspective, then I think that can help brand and position the education provider very well amongst industry, but also solve quite a big problem. So it's a balancing act. You want to do a lot, but you can't do everything. So you have to pick the programs that you think have the greatest opportunities.
Yep, I think that's a great point. You can't solve everything. So choose the niche, choose the the faculty, even within the faculty you're in, you can't solve everything. You gotta almost go and choose which kind of programs you want to work on, and start with something and then kind of iterate from there as well. I want to say thank you very much to all our speakers today. Thank you very much for taking the time and giving us the opportunity to learn from all of you. I think Dr. NorAzmi has also put out his link over there. You can kind of, we'll reach out to all of you with more information in regards to how you can reach SHRDC and CREST and OpenLearning as well. We're going to launch a poll question very shortly, just to understand if you're interested to kind of build micro-credentials and where you're at. And if you are interested to learn more about OpenLearning and how OpenLearning can support your micro-credential journey, please feel free to contact us or fill in the form or the poll that comes out. Or alternatively, at 1 p.m., we're having a demo session that you can kind of learn everything about the platform very quickly as well. Again, thank you very much for taking the time, everyone. I really appreciate it. I hope you have benefited from this, this webinar. There's a whole lot more activities lined up for today as well as for the rest of the week. So please do join us whenever you can. But more importantly, we will answer as many questions as you have for us. If you do think of a question along the way, just please feel free to put it in the Q&A box below or contact OpenLearning as well. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. See you on the next session. Yeah.
Thank you.